Greetings, I'm Zachary Hepner. I'm pleased to share this Dvar Torah with you for Parashat Tazria Metzora. Shakespeare discusses leprosy numerous times, not as the debilitating disease, but he uses it as a metaphor of the rot, or of an individual or in society, such as in Timon of Athens, quote, "Be general leprosy, breathe, infect, breath, that their society, as their friendship, may be merely poison." End quote. Tazria Metzora, Leviticus 12, 13, 14, and 15, is the shabbos that if a drasha is not devoted to lashon hara, it's usually off topic from the parasha, because Tazria Metzora is entirely legal, lacks any narrative, while the Metzora affliction is a hard nut for a shabbos drasha. But, of course, lashon hara, that's a juicy topic. I urge the curious listener to read my father's chapter in Legal Friction, narrative number 7, Divine Dermatology, MIRIAM'S scale disease, and the priestly laws of forbidden foods constitute a hidden polemic condoning intermarriage, from pages 772 through 792. There are many narratives in the Torah associated with Tzaraat, but Numbers 12 is the primary narrative in the Torah because it's explicit, and Miriam's punishment echoes the laws enumerated in Tazria. Also, 2 Kings, chapter 5, with the king with Naaman and the prophet Elisha, is another relevant narrative to this topic. Miriam and Aharon, in private conversation, criticized their brother Moshe and his choice of wife Tzipporah. God chastises them. "How did you not fear from speaking about my servant Moses? Miriam is stricken with tzaraat." Moses prays for Miriam's recovery. Miriam is quarantined outside the camp and is soon healed. Only then does the encampment continue to move along. Numbers 12 contains a few double words which strongly link to Tazria Metzora in Leviticus 13:49 and Leviticus 14:37. The words are yirak-rak, adam dam, and there in Numbers is asaf suf. The word erev rav is not a word that is explicit in that narrative. The last 2 double words are from the quail narrative, immediately preceding the narrative of Numbers 12. V'ha'asaf suf, which is similar to esfali iv shivim ish. And then the inclusion of that narrative at the end of Numbers 12 is ad he'asef, as in ad he'asef Miriam. Ad he'asef and asaf suf are inclusion words, and they're also key words in these narratives. But back to the tzarat of the clothing, the Torah says, "V'habeged ki neged tzarat, b'beged semer, o b'beged pishtim." When tzarat afflicts wool or linen fabric, o vashti, o va'erev, or the warp, or the woof of the linen or the wool, or in skin, or anything made of skin, v'haya hanega yirak-rak o adam dam. If the afflicted cloth is green or very red, bashtio va'erev, of the warp or the woof, o b'chokli, or negat tzara'atu, it is tzarat v'hera el hakohen. It should be shown into the kohen, and the priest, after examining the affliction, shall isolate the affected article for 7 days. Numbers 12 contains then the rhetorical kal v'chomer. Hashem said to Moshe, if her father spat in her face, would she not bear shame for 7 days? And let her be shut out of the camp for 7 days, and then let her be readmitted. The Torah doesn't, in the language of the word spat, the Torah doesn't say spat, but it says yarok, which means spat. Spat. This is double language, and it directly echoes the nega, which is yirak-rak. Yarok echoes with yirak-rak. My father points out in his footnote, number 18, that the racham, which means which is the bird that is forbidden in Leviticus 11, is translated as akar karkash, which echoes yirak-rak, and it is translated as a womb. The racham literally means the womb, this bird. This further connects the temple purity osterization of the tzaraat, similar to a woman who is postpartum, who has produced much blood, as in adam dam. And the words yirak-rak is also used as a pun. for the walls of the house in the purification process in Leviticus 14. Bikirot habayit sheka'arurot yirakrakot o adam damot, where kirot, yirakrakot, sheka'ararot, and kir, and kar, and rak. These words all resonate with each other. So the nature of the garment sarat is akin to the impurity that's associated with a dead fetus that comes out of the womb, echoing the prayer of Moses, where Moses says, God, don't let Miriam be like a postpartum baby whose flesh is being eaten. The Torah also includes tzarat of the warp or the woof, bashti, ova erev. Erev is an allusion to the raven in the Noah narrative. This connection is made by my father, connecting Numbers 12 to the Noah and raven narrative in the polemic against intermarriage. I feel that this is further supported by the same word, erev, as in the woof of a loom. Chazal may have picked up on this because the word not mentioned, which is the erev rav, is not explicit in the quail narrative of Numbers 11, but rather it uses the word asaf suf. Chazal comment that the asaf suf are actually the erev rav. Either way, it's a group that's frowned upon and possibly considered to be a potential alien group that's disloyal to the Israelites, whom Moses brought out of Egypt. I also suggest that shti, the warp of a garment, could also be an allusion to Miriam, whose well produced shtiya, drinking water. The words batsemer o bapishtim, wool or linen, also resonates with this narrative because wool in Aramaic is amra, which resonates with the father of Moshe and Aaron, whose name was Amram. Linen is shetiya, which again resonates with liquid beverage, water, this which is linked to Miriam, in whose merit the well was provided for the Israelites. This is a rabbinic link, the well of Miriam, and Chazal deduce it in Parashat Chukat. My father suggests that the topical conversation, the odot of Aharon and Miriam, was a polemic against intermarriage, with their desire that Moses send away Tzipporah just as the two Tzipporah birds are sent away in the purification process. I actually translate odot as not topical conversation, but complicated conversation, because Chazal have a complete opposite take of my father. They're critical of Moses, who had separated from his Cushite wife, who was as black as a raven. Perhaps Chazal were unconcerned about the nature of the conversation, but rather that any conversation about other people could constitute lashon hara. That's definitely a Moser Haskell. Now, having the Erev Rav and the Asaf Suf as a motif in Numbers 11, it adds to the xenophobic nature of the conversation between Aharon and his older sister. Now on to the word Asaf Suf. The theme of the Asaf Suf, which is the opening words in the quail narrative of Numbers 11, is actually an inclusion with the closing words of Numbers 12. Ve'achar te'asef. First Miriam should heal, and then te'asef, followed by Veha'am lo nasa ad he asef Miriam. The nation did not journey onwards until Miriam was he asef, which is resonating with Asaf Suf. She was he asef with her nation, which resonates with Asaf Suf, which is connected to the Erev Rav. My father points out that Asaf does not mean to gather. Rather, it means to heal. This is pointedly clear from the use of the word in 2 Kings chapter 5. Naaman, Aram's secretary of war, the 5-star general, he contracts tzarat, and he eventually heeds the advice of the Israelite prophet Elisha, who advises him to immerse himself in the Jordan River to cure himself from his tzarat. Initially, Naaman does not heed Elisha's advice, and he says, "Vaiksof Naaman vayelech vayomar, Hine amarti, Elai yatzo yatzav ve'amad ve'kara b'shem Hashem Elokav ve'henif yado el hamakom ve'asaf hametzora." But Naaman was angered and walked away. He thought, he surely should have come out to me and could stand and evoke the eternal, his God by name, and would wave his hand towards the spot and cure the affected parts. Asaf in context can only mean to heal. The use of the word asaf as to heal is significant because it directly links the tzaraat of Naaman in 2 Kings 5 to the most important thematic word in Numbers 11 and 12, and to its resonating words in Tazria Metzora. Here they are. The Asaf Suf may now be translated as the problem makers who foreshadow medical plagues. Ve'achar te'asef, and then you will be healed, not you will gather. Ad he'asef, Miriam means, and then Miriam will be healed. Vayasfu et haslav also foreshadows the quail as precipitating this medical plague that comes later. Parenthetically, this gives pshat to a word that has never been properly understood. When God finally opens Rachel's womb for Yosef to arrive in Genesis 30, verse 23, Rachel declares, Vatahar vateled ben vatomer asaf Elohim et cherpati. She conceived and bore a son, and she said, God asaf, my disgrace. There are many explanations of what Rachel meant with the word asaf, but it ought to mean a very simple translation. God has healed me from disgrace, because asaf is a word associated with healing. Back to Tazria Metzora. This theme is echoed with the warp and the woof of Shtiva Erev, which echoes the Erev Rav. Now let's go to Adam Dam. Adam Dam means very red. V'haya hanega yirakrak o Adam Dam, which is an allusion to Miriam. Adam Dam and Miriam resonate as the two mems of the Miriam, and the Dalet and the Resh are similar. Then Adam Dam and Miriam are similar. This would connect both Aharon and Miriam to the Tazria narrative, because Miriam is the Yirak and the Adam Dam, while Aharon is the priest who's required for Tazria Metzora. To summarize, my father makes many connections between Numbers 11 and Leviticus 13:14. I add that the double words of Yirak all and Adam Dam all link to the Aharon and Miriam. Adam Dam also links to Miriam. The words Shtiva Erev, wool and linen, Tzemer Pishtim, further link to Numbers 12. The double language, which is in Leviticus 13 and 14, is a further indication of the sin that is only produced if there are at least two people present, a speaker and a listener. The narrative indicates that God allows none of this private conversation about Moshe and Sipporah. Moshe ends up on top. The Torah states, if the affliction of the cloth does not subside, the cloth must be burned. But Moses intervenes on behalf of Miriam. He saves her from the fate of similar to the afflicted cloth. There are three people in lashon hara: the speaker, the listener, and of course the person who's being spoken about. Moshe's greatness includes that he was the victim of lashon hara, yet he took the initiative to pray for the healing of Miriam, who had offended him. The way to fix rot in society is not like Shakespeare, to write plays and decry society or to complain about it, but to show compassion and care for the welfare of others, not only your friends, but even those who have misguidedly offended you. Was Moshe correct or misguided to allow the Erev Rav to join the Israelite camp? I don't know, and the verdict might still be out, but what is certain is the compassion and understanding nature of Moshe. May the many lessons of Moshe Rabbeinu's character continue to be an inspiration. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.